Good afternoon. This is Laura Villasmil. I go to Florida State University, and this is for PAD 4331. I will be discussing the responsibilities of citizens during time of disaster. So the key points I wanted to cover here were what is a disaster, how to prepare for a disaster, how to respond to a disaster, how to recover from a disaster, the aftermath, of course, and the mitigation process as well. So, what is a disaster? It refers to events that result in significant harms to lives and/or property, as well as disruption to normal patterns of living. Sometimes governments make important legal distinctions among the terms emergency, disaster, and major disasters. This was a quote pulled from the FEMA website itself, and it does show that there are different terms for referring to the word disaster per se. A disaster can mean an emergency, it can have an emergency aspect to it. It can actually be a major disaster, or it can just be a disaster where the severity is not as bad as a major disaster. So there are different kind of definitions to that. So I'd want to say that the preparedness of disaster would be one of the main roles that citizens should take, just because, preparing for disasters basically means that you are coping better with the whole process. I listed some steps in order for us to prepare for any natural disasters or emergencies that we are encountering. Um, One of the first step would be building a disaster supply kit, and this supply kit should last you about 72 hours, just in case if you do have to reach out and go to a shelter, you at least have that supply kit that does last you 72 hours and is sufficient for those 72 hours, because sometimes when you do go to these shelters, a lot of officials can't provide you with everything since there's so much demand for supplies and resources, since there's other people and other family members that also need the resources. Step two would be making a family emergency plan for your family. I think this is really important, just because at least you're one step ahead of the game, and you and your family are kind of prepared for whatever it is that's coming for you. Three, if you are a pet owner, creating a pet emergency plan would be ideal, just because the emergency plan for them is a little bit different than ours. They have different needs, and the resources are a little bit different than ours. So just preparing for that too would be ideal, just because we love our pets and we want the best for them. And number four would be preparing your business for emergencies as well. There's a lot of business owners out here in the United States, and unfortunately sometimes natural disasters kind of do hinder our work process and our businesses and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people out here that don't have the insurance for those businesses and can't back it up. So if a natural disaster does happen and their business is destroyed, for example, they can't bounce back and kind of get them their money's worth of what they invested in that business, if that makes any sense. So I would recommend having an insurance plan for that business, because that would be ideal. You're not losing money, and it's at least you have a backup plan for that too. So, citizen response to disaster. Finding out what could happen. You can contact your local emergency management to find out what type of disasters that area is more susceptible to. You can protect against financial loss. Make sure you have some kind of insurance you can fall back on, just in case if something horrendous does occur in your community, you are safe from paying that damage. Knowing the warning system. Calling your local emergency management office would be ideal, because they can provide you with that warning, with warning signals that are being used in your community. That way you're more aware of the situation at hand. And preparing to evacuate or staying at home. Planning ahead of time before disaster strikes would be an ideal move, because most families forget to plan ahead for disasters, leaving them helpless when a disaster does strike, because the supplies are limited when the disaster is announced. So this slideshow covers the citizen recovery aspect of it. Monitoring local radio or television reports and other media resources for information regarding disaster relief localities and how you can help a community in need if your community was not affected. That would be a really good way to kind of recover from, the damage and the disaster itself. Monitoring all damages to show the severity of the situation, and broadcast if it's possible to get more people to help in times of need would also be a good idea, just because you're getting more people involved, and the more the merrier when it comes to disasters. The more people help out, the faster the whole process goes. Since the aftermath of a disaster can be traumatizing for most, crisis counseling or stress management assistance might also be needed to recover, just because there is a lot of PTSD that does happen after these disasters. You know, people lose homes, businesses, dogs, families. It's just family members. It's actually crazy. So there's a lot of people out there that do need to talk to someone about this and kind of cope with the whole aftermath of the situation and the event. So this covers the citizen mitigation process. Citizens can make sure to contact officials in order to be informed of the state of the disaster at all times. Citizens can follow the guidelines set by emergency management officials in order to secure your safety and also your family's safety. Citizens, for the most part, can stay cool, calm, and collected in order to not cause panic amongst others experiencing the same thing as you at the moment. You really don't want to psych other people out. I mean, it doesn't work that way. It's not recommended whatsoever. And citizenship involvement by volunteering in order to help with damages and aftermath of event would also be a good way of just, recovering from the disaster itself. So this is just a little slideshow that I wanted to show you guys with, hobbies that I do and my majors and my current status at FSU, so you guys can get a little bit more familiar with me. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.